When Hool decides to visit the planet Gobindi, even a warning from Tash's anonymous HoloNet contact isn't enough to change his mind. He's determined to study the planet's ancient ruins. For Tash, it's a chance to discover what her mysterious uncle is really up to. On Gobindi, Tash thinks she's discovered an Imperial plot to spread a terrible virus across the galaxy, but when Hool assures her that nothing is wrong, Tash is relieved, for a little while. When a big brown bump appears on her arm, Tash is scared. Has Hool lied to her? Is he working with the Empire? Tash knows she must discover the truth. Meanwhile, the bump on her arm is getting bigger.
Welcome to the Padawan Library! We didn't plan after that.
No, we didn't. Hello, this is Levi. With me as always is Tim. Say hello, Tim.
Hello.
And the spooky vampire you just heard is, of course, Mel.
The master of impressions.
I enjoyed it. Much funnier than your other intros.
Yes, I agree. She did it, and I was like, well, you're doing that in the show, so...
Hello, younglings. We're back again for the third Galaxy of Fear book.
Planet Plague.
Yes, Planet Plague. And, this, the opening segment, we're winning it today, guys. We didn't have anything prepared.
Well, I had some ideas, actually. Two ideas. Well, first idea is, I was thinking maybe we could give you a quiz, because I don't think you have your Halloween costume picked out yet.
I actually...
StarWars.com may have
Does Tim have his costume picked out?
It's not Star Wars themed, so I feel bad bringing it up. We never talk about anything besides Star Wars on this podcast.
Right, exactly.
See, I don't listen to the podcast, so I don't know how this goes, but that's interesting.
You shouldn't listen
Star
to the
Wars
podcast.
Only.
It's bad.
I hear half of it sometimes.
Yeah, you usually hear half.
That's about right.
My half.
That's about right. I'm gonna be. I bought a hilarious mask, or I'm about to buy a hilarious Toad mask from Mario.
Oh.
It literally covers the whole head, and it's not rubber, so it's won't be sweaty and annoying.
Nice.
So, and that's all I'm wearing. I'll probably wear it with my regular clothes. I don't put effort into Halloween costumes anymore.
Oh, that's okay.
Wow.
It's fine.
Well,
it's fun though.
Well, you want to?
Yeah, I know you don't talk about anything that's not Star Wars, but we have a non Star Wars related Halloween costume, which I always put a lot of effort into Halloween costumes. It's just fun for me.
I have no problem with it. It's just I haven't in a long time. It's been a long time.
Well, tell people what you want to do.
Oh, we're gonna do the couple from Midsummer.
Which
I know.
one? The main couple?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't want to be that, Levi.
I don't want to be that guy. I agree.
Is that better or worse than?
Although Mel would then be like a part of a murderous cult also, so I guess it evens out. It evens out.
Yeah, so she would be the...
It's just for one night. It's just dressing up so the spirits don't know who you are.
Basically, she wants to be the May Queen, and then I'll be in a bear suit, I guess.
I might be... They're showing the director's cut of that finally in Erie. So I might be going to that in a couple weeks.
Oh,
but
man. I would love to see that in theaters.
I've sat in the chairs they offer at this place. This is a community series of films. And I went to see, I think, Blue is the Warmest Color there years ago. Which, very good movie despite everything. But anyways, that makes no sense to anyone that listens to this podcast, what I just said. Anyway, but regardless, they only have shitty folding chairs, so my ass would be dying.
You gotta bring your own chair, Tim.
Yeah, bring a butt pad,
Tell him to step it up.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Be that guy.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I might go. But I also might just do the free trial of the Apple TV thing, which will have the director's cut as an exclusive.
Right.
So who knows?
So yeah,
who knows?
If you haven't seen Midsommar, see
great,
that. So
great movie.
I was thinking we could either do that or another. So we do a quiz, or the other idea is this is not Halloween related at all, but we talk about a childhood school memory that involves reading. Like elementary, like learning to read, getting to know.
Just because I know, I have actually read a book from this series before, and it was for a form of child torture called AR reading, which I don't think they have anymore.
I've never even heard. I think that might have been after our time. I think that might have been after our time and before any younger person's time.
Yeah,
might be specific to you, Mel.
Yeah, tell them what it is, because I had no idea.
Basically, what it is you it's a system for reading books, and then you take a test on it, and you get points for that. And different points lead to different things, depending on who your teacher is. Or you would get little like a charm bracelet, and you would get little charms for it.
Now we discussed on here Book It. Did you have Pizza Hut Book It?
Yeah, I did have Book It.
Yeah, I think that still exists actually.
It's better.
But the problem is the Pizza Hut is just falling off the cliff.
Pizza Hut's whack. Actually, have you noticed they went back to their classic logo?
Well, that's good. First step. Good first step.
Which was their logo. I saw it. I was like, oh, the 90s retro logo. And then I looked into it, and that was actually the same logo since the 1960s.
Oh, yeah, no. They had that logo forever, and then they changed it to the stupid one. That's the dumb, it looks like a sketch or something.
Yeah, it's moving. It's fast. So.
I also, I will gladly share some sort of reading memory.
Okay.
However, I do want to mention, this means nothing to you, but the great, great, great comic book series Bone is being adapted into an animated series
about this.
for Netflix, and I'm very, very excited. I've been looking forward to this happening forever, and I hope that it's traditionally animated. I know Netflix actually has a traditional animation studio, so hopefully that's...
Live-action CGI with Jason Lee.
That was a series that was always available at the Scholastic Book Fair.
See,
another elementary-related reading.
I'm ancient because I am pre-Scholastic when it comes to Bone.
Oh my god, you guys are not that much older than me. And these are all the good things.
I had the Scholastic Book Fair. Bone was a self-published comic book. That it was widely available. I'm not a cool guy for having read it or whatever. But it was black and white, and I read it that way because it ended in 2004, and then I bought the complete collection you could get for $40 in one book. It was a great black and white comic book, and I read that, and then it started coming out in the color versions from Scholastic, and those are available, obviously, so no shots at those.
Black and white, no offense.
Yeah.
Mel Brooks joke.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
I'm not in the right headspace for that.
All right, well, do you want to do your school memory or my school memory?
You should talk. I've been talking too much.
Okay, I'll talk. So my school memory, I was saying, because you told me that story, and that reminded me of how I learned to read and spell. And in first grade, I had a teacher. It was her first year teaching. And she taught us, instead of phonics and stuff like that, she taught us imaginary spelling, which was spelling the word how it looks in your brain. Imagine the word and spell it how you imagine it. And for years, I've been a notorious bad speller, and my mother just always blamed imaginary spelling.
Did you spell the Joker in the Joaquin Phoenix Joker in his little journal and joke book?
No.
Where every word is comically misspelled?
You just had pages of naked women.
Yeah. The more I think about that movie, the more
well,
problems
we don't.
I have with
Whatever.
it.
We don't need to talk about it. It's bad.
We don't talk about things that aren't Star Wars related.
We talk about that.
I think we talked about the movie briefly last week. I just wanted to make another joke about it.
But a movie we just saw yesterday, Hustlers,
Yes.
which we were kind of talking about, but I don't think that was on air.
No, that was before the
That
show.
was the movie that Joker wanted to be.
Oh,
Honestly.
you know what? I agree, because I've seen the defenses of Joker have been all like, it's one of the only mainstream movies that like criticizes capitalism. It's like it feigns at criticizing capitalism.
Right?
It kind of does, but like there are a million mainstream movies this year that I could talk about that do it better. Hustlers being one. I haven't seen it yet. I'm sure Bong Joon-ho's Parasite is probably much more adept at this idea. And there's, like, even Dumbo, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, right.
Like, I don't know. Like, there's, like, a million movies. I don't know. It's been, like, whatever. Why do we gotta talk about
the movie's whatever. The movie.
Yeah.
I'm not even mad at the movie. It's just not anything I need to care about.
All that movie had to do was be better than The Dark Knight. And it couldn't do that.
That's
it
impossible.
couldn't do that.
That's impossible.
I don't know.
No, that's
I'm
a
just
weird
saying.
bar to set, because The Dark Knight is very good, but we don't need to talk about that. Okay, so, because now I'm just a million thoughts running through my head. Oh, man. Okay, so book memories.
Okay, yep, it's your turn.
All right, when I was in elementary school, I mean, I actually read, unlike a lot of my peers who had to be forced to read, and that's not even a shot at them. They had to be forced to read. They didn't have the right kind of, upbringing, or not even the upbringing. They just didn't have the right environment at home that allowed them to read. I get it. I'm an adult, and I understand that people can't all do that. Whatever. I'm trying to be fair. But I didn't... I read on my own for the most part, but they did put me in like a remedial reading class in first grade for unknown reasons. I think I might have gotten a bad test score on like one test, and they're like, well, this kid obviously is bad. And I had to go like a couple times a week to like this like special group. I don't remember a lot of details, but I do remember they were like, oh, he actually really doesn't need to be here after like 2 weeks, and I felt bad about it. But like I mentioned on this show before, that I actually don't have a ton of experience with the books that we're covering here, because at the age when I was the age that they're targeted at, I was reading quote unquote adult Star Wars novels like X-Wing, really hard stuff to read. It's basically written at the same level, or is longer, but or written up, it's slightly higher level, I guess. But regardless, so I don't know, but I don't know, I love books. I love reading books. I was obsessed with myths and stuff, and we talked about this a little bit on that Myths and Legends episode. I was obsessed with reading like Greek myth books and King Arthur
trees.
stuff. I love trees, so I love Robin Hood.
Are trees and trees are books.
Right,
yeah.
And that's why
that's the circle of life.
And that's why on this show we really push for people to buy their books used if they're going to read along with the show, because
they're out of print
don't cut down a new tree, don't give Disney more money. Disney got enough money, so.
Well, it is what it is.
And speaking of money, it really seems like Disney just might not care about Star Wars now after the Force Friday, but let's not.
I mean, they are launching their biggest venture in the last 20 years with a Star Wars TV show, so I think that's maybe
true. They are.
They probably just. I don't think there's going to be as much emphasis on merchandise as an event anymore. I know that's been a huge part of Star Wars in the past, but I think it's just there's just a constant stream of shit that you can buy.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as much of
changing.
Yeah, it's obviously there will be plenty of merch, probably more than ever, but it's just, I don't think that they're that invested in making it an event. There's no event based on, there's just as much merch for The Lion King, but they don't make any event out of it. It's just Star Wars has a tradition of eventizing every aspect of its thing, and I think they're trying to get to the point where it's just it's just wallpaper. Star Wars is all around, which is I don't love that. I don't mind not having an event for action figures, because that's never been my entry point into Star Wars. No shots at you, my great co-host, Levi.
Just living for those action figures.
I did live for those action figures.
You did.
They were very important.
Did you get rid of your... Did you still have all those Power of the Force figures? Did you get rid of them?
I still have all... Yeah, I still have everything.
So they're just sitting around in storage somewhere?
Yeah, what I call cold storage, which is a very dry corner of a basement and a lot of boxes. I kept that in my Roger Rabbit collection, and that's what I held on to. And if you get to the store and look at the new Star Wars stuff... You gotta check out. This toy is the worst.
You sent me the picture of this. I think I know.
No, not Poe Dameron. This is like the worst toy ever, but like the silliest toy ever. Have you heard of the Screamin' Saber yet?
I think maybe I heard the phrase, but I don't know what it is.
Do you remember like toys that were like you hit a button and you would record a phrase and then you could hit that, then hit
yak it or whatever, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Imagine that with a lightsaber, like a toy lightsaber. And so what it is
it's bizarre. It's the dumbest concept. Like oh man.
Why wouldn't it be
I don't know who came up with that.
Let me explain. So there's a red button on it, and you press the button, and it says, after the beep, record a message.
Yeah.
And when the first time I held it...
So it's like a record.
Yeah. So the first time I held it, I was like, no, and the beep went. I was like, no, and then the lightsaber turned on, and when you wing the lightsaber around back and forth, it will just repeat the phrase that you recorded. So it went like, no. So
just completely unnecessary.
Right. I imagine as like a kid being like, hey, I got a lightsaber. Do you want to come over and play lightsabers with me sometime? Kid's like, hell yeah. And then the kid shows up at your house and he's got the Screamin' Saber. And
I would send that kid home. I would be like, you can't play with me anymore.
All right, well, I have one more thing to bring up, and then we can start the review. But there's a picture, a series of a photo shoot, if you will, that you posted on the Instagram of you in some sort of hat and a golf cart. I don't want to talk about the pictures. Okay. I don't want to talk about
What do you want to talk about then?
But I do want to talk about, is your mysterious job in Texas now, are you a caddy?
No.
That would be so funny. Yes. Yeah. We're at a golf course.
Yeah. I am a maintenance worker at an RV resort.
Okay, so I figured something like that.
Part of my job is driving around a golf cart and like escorting people to their site.
And then in this golf cart, there just so happens to be this like Clone Wars hat.
Yeah.
And like it was the most bizarre thing.
By total chance,
and it's the way it's shaped too is like the pattern of like an Imperial officer's hat, which is actually kind of cool and makes it seem like, was it homemade? Like I don't remember if we even had like any tags on it.
It had to be, and I just thought it was a rag, and then you got in the golf cart and you just like picked it up and you're like, this is a Clone Wars hat. And I was like, what?
Yeah, see, because a friend of the show, Brooke White, he lives with me. And he will testify that these pictures confused and annoyed me, mostly because of your face, and that's not what it is. No shots. No shots. I just said your face was annoying. I'm sorry.
No shots.
Whatever. But I was like, oh, look at this dork shit. And I'm like, it is a Star Wars junior novel podcast. I need to chill. I'm like, this dork bullshit on our, like, this is representing me. And then I was like, oh, but this show is the biggest dork bullshit of all time.
I know.
That's what makes it so amazing.
Yep, two guys pushing 30 doing book reports every week.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of book reports, one more thing.
Okay.
I guess we'll talk. This is the only news. So, Disney Plus, less than a month away. Mandalorian, that means less than a month away. And I'm getting pretty excited about the show. Disney Plus, we'll see. You know, there's some... I'm excited to be able to watch That Darn Cat or whatever anytime I want.
All versions and that darn cat.
All the Apple Dumpling Game movies and stuff. Cool. See, that's actually the stuff I'm excited about on that service. But anyway.
Unironically.
I love the Herbie movies, guys. It is what it is.
I watched a little bit of one day on TCM. It was The Absent-Minded for Professor Goes to Washington.
Well, I haven't seen that one, but the original.
Oh, it was fun. It was fun.
It was very funny.
See, I love those.
Like, why aren't you giving me money for my scientific research?
Yeah, because he goes to the White House and they want to buy flubber from him, and he's just like, you can't buy me. The absent-minded professor can't be bought. Anyway,
but I will say, let you guys know that the problem is we release episodes on Friday, and the Mandalorian episodes are going to come out on Fridays. So we're going to always be a week...
Special episode.
We'll always be a week behind. And just I'm going to prepare the viewers for this now. Viewers, listeners. Okay. I'm going to prepare you guys for this now. After we have announced all our episodes through the end of the year, right? Okay.
Yes, we have.
After that, we will be taking some form of a hiatus. That does not mean it is what it is. You know, hey, we both have lives. It is, but
wow.
This show adds, I would say, about a 10% stress level on every week.
I'm just trying to get kicked off before we have to do the review part.
You're staying.
It's fine. It's not going to be a long hiatus. It'll be like a month and a half at most. Probably will come back like end of January, beginning of February. So, but I'm just pointing that out that I believe The Mandalorian is going to end during that hiatus. So, during that hiatus, we'll do a special episode, is what I was saying.
There we go.
Where we'll talk about the whole thing.
Nice.
Since we're gonna be a week behind the conversation on every episode every week, so we'll talk about it we'll talk about the first episode, and we might check in a little bit throughout the rest of the year, but then we'll have a big full season review. I think that's maybe a fair whatever. 20 minutes.
And I think when we come back, Tim, from this brief hiatus, it is just a brief hiatus. We are coming back.
We're going to announce a return date well before we even go on the hiatus.
Right. And
we just got to figure all that out.
Yeah, we're probably going to be in the middle of Jedi Quest, it'll be Season 2. Padawan Library Season 2, folks.
Yeah.
Darker and edgier.
Maybe some new characters. Maybe some sketches. Maybe we'll some sketches during the hiatus.
Wait, you do sketches on this show? I didn't know this show had sketches.
Yikes! We might have time to actually write some. Who knows? We'll see. But anyway,
I got this idea. I have an idea for Trioculus Goes to the Optometrist.
Ooh, stay tuned, folks. You don't want to miss that.
I like that assonance there. So anyway, let's move on. So
let's get into the book.
When we come back, Planet Plague, babe. Welcome back to Padawan Library. I'm Tim May, here as always with Levi Peretic and our guest this week, Mel Lyon. How you doing, Mel?
Yay, great. Good times. I finished this book today, so it's fresh in my mind.
That makes
two
of us, Mel.
Yay.
I always read the book day of.
Yeah.
That's why my insight is so fresh.
And that's how I did book reports back in the day, too. So.
Hey, they're 100 pages. I don't ever feel like I need to... If I parcel them out, I'll feel like... I don't know. It is what it is. All right, so we left off. Galaxy of Fear. We've been enjoying this series. Would you say?
Yeah. I've had a lot of fun with this series.
And Mel, I assume this is the first one you've actually read. Did you?
This is the first one I've read in like 10 years, I guess. But yeah, I did. Like I said, I mentioned the one, and I was looking through the ones that are taking up all the space on my shelf in this trailer, and I couldn't actually find the one that I had read all those years ago, but. Whatever.
It's gotta be one of them.
Yeah. No, I mean...
They were mantis people.
Okay.
But,
that sounds about right.
Sounds in the... Do you have all of them, Levi?
I don't, no. I'm missing a few.
Okay,
Is there 12 of them, or are there 13 of them?
12.
Okay.
Ooh.
It's a lot.
I don't need number 13.
There should be a 13 spooky haunted one.
Alright, so... But you... have you listened to the previous episodes? Do you have context?
No.
I figured not. But I figured it's a kid's book. They explain all the context you need. So we left
off... And it's very Star Wars-y, too, so...
Yeah.
Very Star Wars-y.
We left off we got our two protagonists, Tash and Zach, two brother and sister. They under the guardianship of their uncle-in-law, Hool.
Yes, that sounds right.
Something like that. Because he's like married to like an aunt of theirs or something. Anyway, so
where's their aunt? Like
I think she died. I think he's a widower or something. Okay. Regardless, whatever. They've been traveling around the galaxy because they were from Alderaan, and they just and their parents are dead and all that. They're coming from Necropolis in the previous book, where Zach, is he a zombie?
Is he? No, that gets wrapped up pretty quickly.
Not looking too good.
Yeah,
not quite. Anyway, so we'll just pick up right here because this John Whitman, by the way, wrote this. We should always shout out the author. I always feel bad.
Oh yeah, John Whitman. The thing. Too.
Yeah, and I also going to always shout out his dedication because they're always putting it on this publishing page. Like they never give him the respect to have a single page for it. And so he's thanked his wife, he's thanked his daughter, and now he thanks his editors. To my editors, Karen Myers and Sue Rostoni, plagued by my tardy writer. Not by my tired.
I don't think he's talking about himself because this came out in April '97 and the previous book came out in February, so it's on time. So he might be on time. Maybe he's taking shots at other writers at Bantam Skylark. I don't know, but Sue Rostoni should be pointed out. She was like the bigwig editor of all the Bantam era Star Wars books in the 90s. So, because I remember, and then she kind of, I think, crossed over a little bit into like New Jedi Order, and then I think she left. But I don't know that for sure. Check Wikipedia, cross-reference, do all that. Anyway, Planet Plague, it begins with a prologue, as usual, and we're back to that mysterious scientist thing. Who's this guy? Who is this scientist? He's talking to the one, the only, Sheev Palpatine, who is reprimanding him about how the first two phases of Project Starscream have been fucked up by Hool and his two brats.
Do they explain how he's still around in these books?
Who?
The Emperor.
Oh, this is after A New Hope.
Oh, okay. I thought okay, never mind. I thought this was after Jedi. Never mind.
It's 6 months past New Hope.
No, but I can see why you'd think that because they do just.
It's
Yeah.
Alderaan.
And then, so Sheev says, see to this next phase personally. I don't have a Sheev, sorry. And the...
Do it. Do it. Personally.
And so, doing a lot personally, if you know what I mean. That's what he's... I don't know why I'm making jerking off jokes. Sheev definitely jerks off. There's no way he doesn't.
Well, in Jedi Prince, Sheev 100% fucks in Jedi Prince, so he's got
I forgot about that. Yeah, I forgot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that's that has to be the one that... Don't you think, I just feel like Sheev doesn't fuck. Because,
she's the one character you don't want to
not that
imagine fuck.
It's not that I don't want to imagine it, it's just that I honestly think...
does want to imagine
I don't... Oh, yeah, of course. Ian, beautiful man. But I just don't understand. I don't think that he could... I don't think that is within the realm of, what he cares about at all.
Yeah, well, he's a very powerful, power-hungry man.
He is, but I think he's
they go hand in hand.
He's beyond humanity, almost. I don't know. I think even, I don't even think he would be, I mean, I'm not, whatever. I just think of him as, I think of him as such a pure distillation of evil that, any sort of sex drive seems almost beyond him. Even a more, fucked up kind of,
He's more like the Pope. He's...
he's like Pope Benedict, he looks like the Emperor. Classic joke from the internet in 2007. All right,
he's got bigger fish to fry.
Okay.
Oh, good Pope joke.
Oh, yeah.
Fish
fry.
Okay.
The Catholics
Yes.
love it.
Fridays, fish fries.
Okay.
Yeah. Pierogies.
So the scientist, he agrees to see to this next phase personally, and but he gets really excited. He starts gloating to himself about how Hool will be shocked by who he is. And we're like, who could this possibly be? Who could it be?
He's so mysterious.
Oh, no, I can't believe who it might be. But, Chapter 1, Tash has the most frightening thing of all. These books are scary, they're spooky.
They're very
He has the most frightening thing of all. Acne! Oh,
every teenager's nightmare.
Guess what? I never really had acne. I feel good about that.
Wow.
Not that. No, I feel
Tim.
almost superior, is what I'm saying to everybody on Earth. I'm joking.
I still have at least 1 to 5 zits on my face at all times.
And
it's when does it end?
It never does.
Never ends.
I have other parts of my body. I don't mean that. I have other parts of my body that are more prone to that sort of thing. But for some reason, my face always beautiful.
The picture perfect. Perfect complexion too.
Perfect.
Just smooth.
I don't sunburn easily. I tan very easily.
Wow.
I'm just my skin is great. Anyway, so
Good night.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Okay.
I'm not better than anybody, but my skin
It was a
is
joke.
fantastic.
I'm joking about it. Whatever.
It's fine.
I'm also a fucking fat fuck who's miserable all the time.
No,
You happy about it? You want me to tear myself down?
No,
we don't want
I'm
that.
joking.
Happy you have nice
there's
skin.
no body shaming in this
No,
show.
only skin shame. No, wait, not skin shaming either.
It's fine.
No
Everything.
shaming.
No shame.
No shame.
No shame, obviously, or else you wouldn't be.
Hosting this show.
Oh, God. I feel such shame every day about this show. So, Chapter 1, yes.
Anyway.
Tash, she's got a zit. And Zach isn't being very sympathetic. He's almost like me. He's like, I got the perfect skin. But he does have a headache or something, and Tash decides to take her mind off this zit and try to contact Force Flow again. Now, if you don't remember, Force Flow was mentioned a lot in the first book as this kind of HoloNet user that got Tash interested in the Force and the Jedi, but then had disappeared. So she's trying again to contact Force Flow and wants to know if this mysterious mentor of hers knows anything about her mysterious Uncle Hool. And she does actually get a hold of him this time, or them, we don't know. But just as Tash is about to ask about Hool, the Shroud, the ship they're on, their new ship, lurches in space and she falls off her chair.
What?
Oh, I'm so spooked, man.
Well, if that spooks you, what happens next will blow your mind. Tash runs to the cockpit. She's expecting to find Zach tinkering with the ship's control panel again, but instead, Zach's passed out at the controls. Huh?
Wow.
Uncle Hool shows up, and they wake Zach up. He thinks he must have dozed off, while Tash says it looks like you fainted. And Hool notices that Zach, when he fell asleep, he flipped a switch that caused the hyperdrive to be flooded with fuel. That's why the ride got so bumpy.
Zach.
Zach, yeah, So they grill Zach and ask if he's feeling all right. And despite his drained look and the fact that he had a run-in with Dr. Evazon last week, he says he's prime. They suggest he get some rest, and he leaves. And then Hool confides in Tash that he has no clue how to tell if a human is sick. So Tash, using her mother's intuition, guesses maybe he's coming down with the flu.
I'm not sure that's how I read that.
Well, not
the
her.
way you described it is
not
like
her
natural mother's intuition.
Genetically inclined
nurturing woman.
I guess that wasn't phrased right. Not her mother, like her mother's
but literally like what her mother used to say.
Yes, right.
Was that Zach just had the flu.
Her mother's intuition. And so from there, So they go back to the lab because the ship has a lab, all right? It's a disgusting lab that Dr. Evazan did experiments in. And DV's been working on cracking some files. And DV has cracked a file. He has uncovered a file named Project Starscream. And that's a project that we know that mysterious scientist is working on. So, however, this file is encrypted, and his computer mind cannot figure it out. He has not been programmed for that. So, Tash has the idea to send it to Force Flow. Now, Hool isn't so certain about this, and he gives Tash a lecture about talking to strangers on the HoloNet. Remember, people, if you meet someone on the HoloNet, they might not be who they say they are. You know, it's that anonymity of the net. The HoloNet. So she does it anyway, and she sends the file. 1997. Yep. And Force Flow gets back, and he's like, "Oh no, you sent this file, and I'm being tracked by Imperials. I'll message you again when it's safe." And then Zach comes in her room, and he looks like a sweaty ghost, and he's like, "Boy, I'm not feeling well." And then he faints. Oh, he's on the ground.
What could be wrong with Zach?
So Zach is dizzy and clammy. Does he have a fever? Could it be even worse than a fever? Hool decides that that's enough. We don't need to do this anymore. We're going to take him to the Madala Infirmary on the planet Gobindi. I got an old friend who runs that from the Imperial Biological Welfare Department. And Tash is like, I don't like the sound of that. These Imperials, I don't trust these Imperials. They blew up my planet. But she has no choice. She needs Zach. She wants Zach to be better, and she's watching Zach on the ship for several hours, and then she's like trying to distract herself. So she goes and she tries to contact Force Flow again. No response, and she sends a message that she's going to try again when they reach Gobindi. And as they approach Gobindi, this planet, it's surrounded by Star Destroyers, and there's warning shots fired at the Shroud. Because it's an unidentified ship, and Hool realizes that Zach must have accidentally stopped transmitting their transponder code when he fell asleep on the dashboard, and Tash flips it back on, and the Star Destroyers leave them alone, and they sail right in to the system, and there's Star Destroyers all over the place. And Hool mentions, there must be something going down here. But they get through, no problem. And they approach the capital city, Madala. Hool explains that the Gobindi people died out long ago, and the capital is all that's left. But the Empire opened this planet up for colonization a few years earlier. And so, anyway, Dr. Kavafi, who is his boy, runs the thing, he's waiting there expecting them. And they land, and they're greeted by Dr. Kavafi, and he straps Zach to a gurney and takes him off. Tash forgot to check on a reply from Force Flow, though, so she rushes back to the ship and checks. And this is his reply. It says, Searcher, this is Force Flow. Have information regarding Project Starscream. Whatever you do, stay away from Gobindi. Stay away from Gobindi.
Ooh, how ominous.
Chapter 4.
Ooh. Hool calls for Tash, and she hesitates, but she has no choice to return to the med shuttle. Another thing to be afraid of. Ooh. So she overhears Hool is discussing, anthropological arrangements with Kavafi. They're kind of chit-chatting back and forth, and she does not feel her uncle cares enough about her brother. What a terrible thing to have happen as a child, to feel that your caretaker does not care about you. So the adults discuss some architecture, which we should probably, clarify. It's kind of,
cigarettes.
It's off. Yeah, it's off the bottom of the natural.
Kind of an Islamic style of architecture.
Yeah. I was thinking more like Mayan kind of.
Oh yeah, could be.
So the idea is that this planet has a jungle so thick and creatures so fearsome that these old beings that live there built these pyramids and bridges in between them so they didn't have to touch the planet's floor.
And even Kavafi is like, this kid is, sick. Maybe we should hold off on this conversation. Which gains Tash's trust slightly. She's still skeptical of this whole, imperialism thing. And, yes, she searches for danger, thinking back to Force Flow's message.
Yes.
And then I am going to read on page 32. Suddenly, Zack moaned in his sleep. "Mom!" Tash bit her lip. Zack's face was still bloodless. Even in sleep, he looked miserable. "Halt!" Tash looked up. They were surrounded by Imperial stormtroopers. Worst thing that could happen.
So, the stormtroopers are they're just scanning for weapons. No problems. And Kavafi takes Zack to the 10th floor of the pyramid, or of the tower, or whatever it is, I don't know. And he pulls out a giant needle and injects Zack with it. And he says that Zack has a strain of influenza. Not a big deal. Tash is dubious about this, though, and Kavafi allows her to use an electroscope to look at the virus living on Zack, and she can see it's multiplying like crazy. She sees it at this full size. It's wild. And then Kavafi wants to inoculate Hool and Tash against the virus, and they both ultimately agree. And when Kavafi leaves the room, Tash tells Hool about Force Flow's message, and Hool, he waves it off. He's like, this crazy guy on the internet. I don't trust this person.
Right.
And so,
in his position, I don't know if I would either.
I don't blame Hool at all. Force Flow, who knows who Force Flow is? Force Flow could be this scientist. Who knows? This mysterious scientist. Actually, wait a minute. We'll talk about theories later on. Anyway, Kavafi returns, tells them that Zack will wake up in about an hour, and Hool insists that Tash goes on a walk and gets some fresh air, and Kavafi offers to show her and DV to the elevator. And they take the elevator down to the bottom floor, and DV wants to know if the ziggurat has an elevator, and Kavafi says, nah, this one is pure stone, purely decorative. And so when they do reach the bottom floor, though, Kavafi makes an excuse that he needs to go back upstairs. Tash and DV, when they're outside, though, they come across a bridge, and on the bridge are some green, blobby, Slimer-like creatures coming straight towards them.
Oh no, Blob! What's going to happen?
Gross.
Tash, she dives out of the way, and because this Blob is just cruising down the street. However, DV is not so lucky. The goo catches his legs, and he starts screaming for help. Then, out of nowhere, a hero comes and he grabs DV and he gives DV a good yank, and the creature grabs a hold of the man, and with DV's help, the two of them are able to lift this creature high above their heads and throw it off the bridge. And Tash sees that this mysterious hero, he had a blaster, and she asks, hey, why didn't you just shoot the thing? And he's like, oh, well, these Imperial patrol, if they roll by and they see that I got a blaster, they might, want to do some chatting. So he explains that these blob creatures, they just emerged from the jungle a few weeks ago. And Tash is like, why doesn't the Empire do anything? And the man's like, well, why would the Empire care? Oh, by the way, I'm Wedge Antilles.
Oh!
Whoa!
Nice.
I love these cameos in this book. And now that we're all floored, much like how we'll be floored when Poe and Wedge share a awkward exchange in Rise of Skywalker.
Hey, listen. Wedge is going to be awesome in that movie because I've seen my boy Dennis Lawson recently. He was in an episode of Victoria, which is a show that I watched with my mom, and he was very good. Very good. Very good.
Good.
He is He's not like way out of like practice. He'll be fine. His presence will be earned and fresh.
Better be.
Listen.
He's Wedge.
I am all about being negative on these new movies, but the fact that you're upset that Wedge Antilles is going to show up,
I'm not
upset. It's just going to be poorly written. We already know that. It's going to look weird. It's going to the music even might be a little wonky, and it'll probably just be like
the music's been incredible
in between weird.
No, you just dissed John Williams. So. It was one thing if it was Giacchino, but you did diss Williams.
There have been weird moments in these movies.
I wouldn't say the music is a problem.
The music hasn't exactly helped.
Are you talking? Well, you're talking. Rogue One wasn't Williams. Rogue One is the wackiest of them all.
Yeah, but I mean, even, like, some of the new stuff, it's...
we're not going there.
It's not like... he's phoning it in just like everybody else.
Well, true, he is.
He's not, well...
He's still giving us... He's still giving us good stuff. He's there for...
No. He's not voted this season. Easily his best scores in, like, 15 years, but that's fine. Listen to the Warhorse score. There you go. And I love that movie. I love that movie, Mel. I am alone in the Warhorse love. But yeah. Anyway, okay. So
back to the chapter.
Back to Warhorse.
There's Wedge, and Tash has no clue that this is the Wedge Antilles, the only X-wing pilot to see the destruction of both Death Stars. Wedge is great. I'm not dissing Wedge.
Also, you haven't read the X-wing books. You don't have the full appreciation of Wedge.
That's why I was thinking this would have been a good book for your brother. Your brother would have liked this book.
I adore Wedge Antilles. Listen, the fact that Dennis Lawson is finally coming back, I don't care at all what the context is. It will be cool. Listen, it doesn't matter.
What if a Porg shits on him?
First of all, number one, Porg's rule. If you're gonna try to come at Porgs, I don't have any time for that. And then number two.
Stop trying to get kicked off the show.
We have a long way to go. Nobody's kicking anyone off.
I know.
I'm just here to stir the pot.
John, we know.
Listen, I just, I feel sometimes I feel like I hate these movies, but then I talk to you guys. You are so negative on these movies. It's like, listen, you don't want a scene between Oscar Isaac and Wedge Antilles? I do. I don't care. That will be cool. It'll be first of all, whatever his faults are in general, J.J. Abrams is good at writing moments. He always has been. He always will be. It'll be a fine moment. It's not going to be overwritten in any way. They'll nod at each other from as they're climbing into X-Wings, and you'll be like, cool guy, another cool guy, being cool guys together. That's all it's going to be. It's not a big deal. And then, it'll be fun. Maybe him and Lando will have a fun moment, even though, they fought in the battle of the second Death Star, so...
Well, yeah.
Together. So that...
I wouldn't numb to climb back into the co-pilot seat of the Falcon with Lando. That's what I want.
You know what? I'm not sure... what do you actually want from these movies? Because that sounds hacky to me. That sounds
they're boys.
That sounds like is there a trash compactor anywhere?
No, it does not. How dare you?
Oh, yes, it does. Finish this.
Okay,
finish this
all right.
Chapter. Wow, so off track.
Anyway. He explains that he's there to, quote-unquote, see some friends, but he's been there for weeks because the Imperial blockade. Apparently the Empire claims there's been increasing pirate activity in the area, so they brought in the blockade, but suspiciously nobody on Gobindi has ever seen any pirates. So Tash says, that's funny, they just let us land, which causes Wedge to, they just landed? Nobody's been in and out of here for weeks. So Tash thinks he's accusing her of being an Imperial, but she's not. And we have this little thing here with Wedge, and he asks her why she's been there, and she says the infirmary, her brother's sick, and he nods in the direction of the infirmary, and he says, in the past few weeks, nobody has come out of there alive.
So, you mispronounced Robandi, and it reminded me of the show Alias and the evil organization Rambaldi. Speaking of J.J. Abrams. Alias is like a forgotten show. Nobody talks about it.
It is really forgotten.
Yeah,
I feel like Lost is becoming that same way.
Lost
too.
is not. No. Incorrect.
Not as much as...
Incorrect.
Give it time.
First of all, Lost, whatever people think of the ending, Lost was important the entire run as a thing. Alias tapered off partially because of Lost in terms of cultural relevance, and it was never as big a show, so that's not the same. Not the same. Lost is huge still. There's the 15th anniversary, there's rewatch podcasts. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. All kinds of stuff.
We should have
There's
just
a great interview with Lindelof
Yeah.
on the season 1 finale episode of this rewatch podcast. I will send it to you. The interview is incredible. He says, if you had caught me 2 years ago, I would have been we're still talking about Lost, and now I'm finally talking about it again. So, delightful. My boy Damon has his... I hope it's good Watchmen show that I don't think is... I'm always going to have conflicted feelings about it, but it starts this weekend. I'm getting excited. Let's move on. Chapter 7?
Yes.
Much like episode 7, where Wedge should have been in the first place. There we go.
Well, he wanted more money, remember? He wanted a bigger role and more money, and they were like, no, sorry. And he was like, well, okay, then you don't want me.
Yeah, I think he clearly was...
want it bad enough.
He clearly was reading X-Wing books and Rogue Squadron comics and stuff. I'm the biggest dude
That's
ever.
gotta be crazy to read a book like that and be like, this is me.
Yeah, because he's such a minor character in the movies. But anyway...
Right.
Chapter 7. I'm now, I'm so out of the rhythm here. Before Wedge can explain what he means by what you just said, which was, what?
Wait, huh?
That nobody comes out of there alive or whatever.
Did you read that?
You did. He did.
Yeah.
He did. He got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody comes out of the infirmary alive, and before he can explain what he means by that, a bunch of stormtroopers show up and they apprehend a Rhodian in the crowd. And when Tash turns to find Wedge, he's gone. And then they look at this wanted holo, and it says it has 4 people that are wanted for quote-unquote piracy. One of them was that Rhodian that was just apprehended. Another one was a Bothan. Another one was some human. And the other one was Wedge himself. What's going on? So, who's this guy? Who is this guy? Tash is like, I don't know. And then DV's like, well, must be a criminal. Let's move on from that situation. Let's put that in the past. Put it in the past. It is behind us now. Behind us now. So, Tash's mind starts spinning. What could Wedge have meant about the infirmary? How did Hool get past the blockade so easily? As she heads back to the infirmary, she realizes that the bruise from her shot earlier is now raised and bumpy. And gross, grody. She is immediately greeted when she returns to the infirmary by Kavafi, but she brushes right past him to get to Zach's room. Kavafi is trying to tell her something, but she ignores him, and when she arrives at Zach's room, he is gone! Missing! Okay.
You want to read this with me?
Sure, okay.
Where's my brother? Tash demanded.
Kavafi held out his hands to try to calm Tash. Now, young lady, I tried to tell you that...
What have you done with him?
What's going on here? Uncle Hull appeared in the doorway.
They've done something to Zach. Tash said they've taken him somewhere.
Of course they have, Uncle Hull replied. I'm the one who authorized it.
You know where he is?
Of course I do.
Could I see him?
Kavafi looked bewildered. Of course you can see him, but he's at the other end of the hall, that way.
I don't know how to take notes on these books, you guys.
It's fine.
Just go to your next.
Here we go.
They find...
So Zach is just, in a Bacta tank doing...
Bacta things.
Yeah, which we all know and love.
Yeah.
Bacta.
It's green, though.
It's
a green
which
Bacta.
I thought was going to be suspicious, so that's like something that's in my notes, but I guess it is kind of greenish, right?
No, it's clear. Bacta's
okay,
clear.
Never mind.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's a little... Never mind. Okay. So then Tash explains to the doctor, she heard this place was kind of sketchy. She doesn't really give a lot of details, and Kavafi's like, yeah, people talk shit on the Empire, go figure. Hool has Tash look after Zach while they go back to the Shroud for... Does it say why?
No, Uncle Hool's always
He's always doing his own thing.
He's got important work to do.
Yeah, he's an important guy.
The back of this book, by the way, represents the story completely incorrectly. I don't know if you read the back.
I did, yeah.
It says that he's there for research, that Hool's going there for research. Then when he mentions, maybe someday I'd like to do some research here, but that's...
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of, puts him as a bad guy.
Well, that's kind of what this whole book tries to make him out to be. Tash always wants him to be a bad guy, and he's not.
It's like you always think your parents are evil, and then...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of got some trust issues, which is understandable.
Yes.
Where did we leave off? So she's looking after Zach. Hool and Devi are going back to the ship, and Tash notices that her arm hurts where she was injected. Sometimes that happens when you get a flu shot, but that's not what this was. So she asked, will you have a look at this? And it's a brown lump that's grown uglier and larger, a few centimeters wide. And the veins run up and down her skin. Very gross stuff. But she, she gets to hang out at this medical place and play on the computer. And Kavafi says, he has to go check on other patients. And that's where she finds this computer terminal. And so she's clicking through. There's a lot of... things she interprets as lies from the Empire. So she switches it off, and it takes her back to the main menu, which asks for a 10-letter password. 10 letters.
Oh.
What could it be? Then she types the letters. STARSCREAM. Oh, man. The screen remained blank. She was about to cancel the entry and start again when an image popped into the center of the screen. Ooh. So the letters, which we haven't talked about, IBWD, which at first read Imperial Biological Welfare Division. Now it reads Imperial Biological Weapons Division.
Oh.
Weapons. Those are dangerous.
Should have been warfare.
That's a bad place.
Here's my
for
note
kids to
for
be.
John Whitman. My note for John Whitman should have been warfare division.
Okay.
Would it?
It would be better.
Weapons.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Warfare, welfare.
Would have been cooler. But weapons is fine. It's a crazy reveal. Is that the end of that chapter?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Listen. Gobindi, the planet. What's the city called again?
I don't remember.
Madala.
Madala, yeah. Madala, before they went extinct, the Gobindi might have considered filing for Chapter 9 bankruptcy. The largest city in the history of the United States to do it was Detroit. I think this is a bigger city.
Probably.
But, hey, not unprecedented. Chapter 9 bankruptcy is there to help our most at-risk communities. Moving on. Just then, a medical technician enters the room, and Tash closes that window on the computer and tries to communicate with Zach in the Bacta tank without the technician hearing her. So she charades it up, mimes out Starscream. She points at a star on a poster, and then she, like, mimes screaming. And then she's like, hey, like, puts her arms out, you know, waving around the room like, this is Starscream, basically. And he gets it. Zach gets it. He's a smart kid. And Starscream is connected to the infirmary. And so Tash decides that she needs to talk to Force Flow immediately. So she rushes out and heads back to the Shroud, and leaves Zach there in the back to tank. And she asks the Stormtrooper where the next transport is. He says, it's going to be 20 minutes. That's too long. So she runs all the way across 4 bridges to get to the Shroud. And when she arrives, Hool isn't there, but DV is. And DV says, you got to wait at the ship since you showed up. Hool wants you to wait here, stay in one place. And so she goes to her room. She tries to log onto the HoloNet, but access is denied. The Empire is denying all off-world communication to Gobindi because of this quote-unquote pirate activity. What is going on? So she gets so distracted by all of this that she doesn't notice someone is coming into her room.
Oh. And surprise, surprise, it's Wedge again.
And his buddies.
His buddies, yeah, from the wanted poster.
Listen, I get that they need to do these cliffhangers at the end of each chapter, but why do they have to turn Wedge into some weirdo creep? He could knock on the door. I know, they could have been like, there's a knock on the door. It's like...
Yeah, that would be just as scary.
And there's this hilarious moment when he shows up, too. I can't believe I didn't write it down in my notes, but he says something like, I don't know if you're, like, an Imperial, like, commander's daughter or something. Like, whoa. Like... Well,
yeah. I don't know what that really, like, I think that in context, that makes sense. I don't think that's like, oh, I shouldn't be shacking up with you or whatever. Like,
you never know. You never know.
I know about Wedge Antilles, the fictional character. I do know. You know what? I don't need to assume. I know that, like, everybody is a monster secretly, and, like, I can't, like, respect anybody in real life, but these are fictional characters. Let me have my fun.
They can at least be pure.
Yes.
Real people, not so much.
Wedge here has a great moment, and this is one of his best moments in the book here. And Tash, she thinks he's going to steal the ship. You're going to steal the ship, she said? You are pirates. And he says, hey, if we wanted to steal, we would have done it already, Wedge replied. We just need a ride-off planet. You'll be doing the galaxy a favor, unless that is I'm wrong, and you're really part of the Empire. Well, I'm not, Tash snapped. She was no longer nervous, but feeling strangely warm. Her breath was short. I hate the Empire. They killed my parents. They were on Alderaan when it was destroyed by the Death Star. Wedge frowned. You're from Alderaan? Yes, and I'll bet I'll have more reason to hate I have more reason than you to hate the Empire. Again, and the venom in her words surprised her. But she did hate the Empire. She had every reason to hate it. She felt hot tears form in her eyes. She didn't mean to speak these words. She was hardly aware that she had thought them, but they came out of her mouth. I want revenge on them for what they did to my parents. I'm glad you're on our side, the other human joked, but Wedge's eyes grew soft. I'm glad we agree that the Empire is bad. Tash, but didn't you say you admired the Jedi Knights? She nodded. Wedge considered. My people, the people I work with, we believe in the Jedi too. We've read a lot about them. Me too, Tash exclaimed. Wedge continued. Well, let me tell you one of the things I've learned about the Jedi, and it has to do with the word revenge. Don't use it. Don't even think it. He looked at Tash hard. The Jedi fought many wars, but do you know what truly made them great? What? She asked breathlessly. They were warriors, but they weren't violent. They never forgot that their enemies were living beings, just like they were, with their own beliefs and right and wrong. They didn't get angry. They didn't hate their opponents. The Jedi always kept their minds on what they were fighting for, rather than what they were fighting against. Tash listened to the words. They sounded like good advice, but they didn't sink in. Not hate the Empire? Not hate the people who had destroyed her family and her entire planet? "I'm not sure I can do that," she admitted. If anything, she realized the anger in her was growing by the minute. She felt her heart pounding in her chest, the blood throbbed in her veins, her bruised left arm ached. Wedge shrugged. "I'm not sure I can either," he grinned, "but I'm just a star pilot. I'm the happiest behind the controls of a snub fighter, not trying to use the Force." Wedge paused again. "Tash, we have information we need to get off planet. All transmissions are blocked. No ships can fly, except this one. This ship's registry has unlimited landing clearance for this dock. We can fly out of here and no one will question us." Tash recalled how the shroud had been docked on Gobandi once they had activated their telesponder code. How did Hool manage it, she wondered. Is he an Imperial after all? She never got the chance to answer. Behind Wedge, the other human cried out. Something grabbed him.
Oh, I have to open up the... Okay. Sorry. I was working on something else for the show. Anyway.
Nice.
Whoa.
Good stuff. Great stuff.
It's nothing.
Going to be, but most importantly, it's going to be raw stuff.
Like this.
Yeah. Garth Brooks, guys. We could become the 800th podcast to reference that. Very funny, though. Okay, so, Chapter 11. I didn't have a bankruptcy joke, that's why I went with the Chapter 9 bankruptcy.
The Chapter 9. That's good.
That's
I feel like you could also do a Chapter 13 as well.
There's all kinds of bankruptcy options, so we do need to diversify that our portfolio there. Which is for... That's something you do in some forms of bankruptcy. I wish I knew which ones. Okay. Okay, so, Chapter 11. The Blob is back. And it attacks Wedge's human comrade, and then he and the Bothan fight it off. He assumes it's some sort of biological weapon, and Tash mentions that she knows about the Imperial Biological Weapons Division. Wedge is very surprised, but also very impressed. But he doesn't really see what the Blob can actually do. He's like, it's annoying, but it doesn't feel like something that can become like a real mass weapon the way the Death Star was or something like that. And then right at this point, the other human rebel pilot who came in contact with the Blob collapses. Blood drains from his face, the whole bit. Wedge suspects that the Blob is a carrier of disease. He and the Bothan take their friend off on their speeder to take care of him, but he still hopes to hitch a ride in the Shroud if they're cool with that. And so, but at this point, this leaves Tash alone on the ship, and Zach still in Imperial custody. Moving on.
Not good. Not good. All right. In the zone.
Oh.
So Tash, she slowly makes it to the infirmary, using her anger to power through her discomfort. And she fantasizes about revenge, which she was just told not to do, but she does it anyway. She's a teenager, so, she can have that. And by the time she gets to the infirmary where, she thinks Zach is gonna be, she gets to the back to tanks and they're all empty. That makes no sense. So she tries to get an answer from this condescending, irritated technician who probably makes minimum wage. And he at least, it's kind of like pulling teeth, but he guides her to the other end of the hall where there are more Bacta tanks. And she notices a computer. So she pushes off the data discs, the electroscope, and the leftovers from someone's lunch. And she's about to start typing when all of a sudden someone asks her, "Still looking for Dr. Kavafi?" Which she mentioned she was earlier, that I did not mention. She twirled around and the technician had followed her. She was caught! Sucks.
She's caught, Tim.
She's caught. Sorry. Something was going on with FaceTime.
Worst nightmares.
All right, Chapter 13. Zach has already been busted out by DV. This is a big reveal. Under the orders of Uncle Hool. They reach the Shroud, but Tash is gone. What's going on here? What's going on? Zach steps in some goo from the Blob and proceeds to follow its trail down the side of one of the ziggurats. And DV follows him reluctantly, so reluctantly, in fact, that he doesn't realize somebody else is following them. So, who could it be? Could it be the same person that was at the door earlier? Spoiler, it is! We'll talk about that later. Tash, but back to Tash, she manages to shake that attendant off and is sent to the 20th floor where Kavafi is meeting with
Double cliffhanger chapter.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Hool seems very friendly with Kavafi, and he thanks him for, quote, letting him in on his secret. Tash hears them also talking about something on the bottom floor, so she goes to a turbo lift and guesses the password. They ask for a password. She guesses the password. Starscream, of course, and down she goes. And at the very bottom, she exits, and there's a bunch of mossy stone walls, and she realizes, I'm inside the ziggurat. Inside. Nobody's there, but she looks up. Several blobs hanging right above her.
Oh, no!
Those gross blobs again.
And the blobs, they start dropping from the ceiling. Tash, she tries to dart back for the turbo lift, but they block her path, so she's got to run further into the ziggurat. And eventually the blobs, they give up, and they start to scurry back up the walls. So Tash, she comes upon a series of cells, and in these cells they are containing blobs of various sizes, and some of the larger ones are violent and start bashing up against the plexiflor panels. And in some, they're just small, they sit there, but in the last cell, she sees the Rhodian who got arrested by the Imperials, and he's covered in the blob slime. And I'm going to read page 90 here. Tash felt her stomach turn in disgust. She saw the Rhodian's mouth move. The plexiflor was soundproof, so she couldn't hear what he had said, but she had guessed by the snarl on his lips that he was swearing. He struggled violently against the ooze, trying to shake it off. Instead, the amount of ooze suddenly increased, almost burying him. Tash's eyes went wide with fear. She had seen that kind of instant replication once before when she had looked through the electroscope in the Medi-chamber. She knew that she was looking at a virus. The Rhodian let out a scream and made one last effort to shake the disgusting mess off his body, but his struggle only made things worse. The virus replicated itself again, and the Rhodian simply disappeared. Tash swallowed, but her mouth was dry as sand. The blobs were people. The people who had been infected with the virus. The blobs are people!
Oh.
They've got to tell people.
Tell them what?
The ocean's dying. The plankton's dying. It's people. Soylent Green is made out of people.
Crazy stuff. So, chapter 15. Chapter 15. I'm trying to bring the energy down here a little bit.
Okay, all right.
Going down, I guess.
Zach and DV, they reach the bottom of the ziggurat. Mossy and gross, kind of like the lab that Tash was in. And they get trapped by the blobs again. Until Wedge and his Bothan buddy show up. They're the ones that were following him. What a surprise. Mm-hmm. And they start fighting off the blobs. And DV finds a door that might be their path to freedom, but it's inscribed with some sort of ancient Gobindi text that says something about a spot where a deadly virus was sealed up for eternity.
That's an awfully long time. So chapter
it's a mighty long time.
A mighty long time. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the Rhodian body turns into a blob. Tash has a lot of questions. Was this the fate that awaited Zack? Had Dr. Kavafi infected Zack with the virus? And what was Uncle Hool's involvement? How could he allow Zack to be harmed? She has all these questions, and she has all this rage, and that gross thing on her arm. So she's got a lot going on. She enters one of these chambers, these cell things, and a loudspeaker announces, "This is the final test of the Gobindi virus." When who should appear to be like the victim of this experience but Dr. Kavafi? And so she asks him, like, what happened to you? And he has no idea who she is. This is very strange. She says, "You know me, I'm Pool's niece." And he explains to her that he has been in this cell for 6 weeks or so. And he was kidnapped right out of the infirmary by someone who looked exactly like him. An imposter. What could it possibly be?
Could it be a clone? What is it?
Wow, we'll never know. Oh, no, wait, maybe we will. And so the long story short, he had come to this planet to, research their viruses and everything. But it wasn't long before the Empire, had come here. And this is where I completely gave up actually taking notes. So... But I mean, it's like,
I didn't realize you passed off the note taking to Mel. We never do this with guests.
I
wanted to surprise you. Yeah, we split.
I do appreciate.
Up our notes.
Listen, I appreciate it. It's been cool. No, I'm just saying, like, I feel like it's maybe it's an extra burden to place on our guests who already have to read a whole book.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Agree,
it's terrible.
But
you
sometimes
should never
they just
force
sit
anyone
there,
to do this.
Yeah,
like
that's why I always feel bad for them for just sitting there while we give our
book
report.
Yeah, see, this is why we would like some feedback from the listeners about changing the format slightly, because. And we're going to test it out with some of the off-week books. More. But we don't need to recap these whole books, do we? I don't know.
I don't know.
Exciting stuff to look forward to in the Padawan library.
We all love state of the pod conversations. Always great listening.
Yes.
Sorry.
But anyway. Okay. All right.
Yes, and... so basically, I mean, I don't know how much of this is really going to be relevant.
There's an imposter.
There's an imposter.
And then
there's the sides of the things are warnings. Did we get that far?
I don't know. Just say...
Yeah, you absolutely should not have guests be doing this.
Someone, just read the last line. Uh-huh. All right. So a panel on the wall slid back to reveal an observation viewport. Someone was standing at the transparisteel window. The figure said. I don't know what he's talking about. But it was Uncle Hool!
Long story short.
Uncle Hool?
Uncle Hool.
Was it Uncle Hool? I don't know.
How was Uncle Hool involved in this?
I don't know if it was actually Uncle Hool.
Why would he be involved in this?
Was it actually Uncle Hool, though? We'll see. We'll see. Tash blinked. I'm reading here. This is my first part of the book I'm going to read. I'm going to read this part of the book aloud to you, our listeners.
Nice.
Tash blinked. No, it wasn't Uncle Hool. The face was too round and the body too squat. Plus, the figure grinned evilly. Hool rarely even smiled. No, this wasn't Hool. But he was a Shido, a member of Hool's species, which meant that he could change shape at will. That's how he impersonated you, Tash realized. That's who I thought was Dr. Kavafi. A convincing act, I thought, the mysterious Shido said, speaking through a comm unit. It had to be, to trick Hool. I even went to the trouble of actually healing your brother in a Bacta tank, just to keep Hool at ease. Where's Zack? Tash yelled. The mysterious Shido grinned again. At this moment, I'd say he is lying on the floor of his cell, covered in the virus. In another few minutes, he could be just another... What did you call it, Tash? A blob creature? Tash's knees felt weak. All this time, she had suspected Hool of doing something wrong. He was being fooled, just like she was. She could have talked to him at any time. Instead, she had kept her worries to herself, and now they had all fallen into some sort of deadly trap. Do not feel bad, young lady. The Shido said mockingly. I'm saying that in the voice also. You are dealing with an intellect far greater than yours. Why are you doing this to us? Tash yelled. The Shido's face clouded in anger. Because you deserve it, and far worse. Thanks to your meddling uncle, you and your brother have ruined 2 of my experiments so far. Your experiments? Tash could hardly believe what she was hearing. The Shido continued, I could have snuffed you out like an incense candle, but instead I watched and waited, giving you one last chance. And rather than give up your investigation, you headed straight here to Gobindi! We came here because my brother was sick, Tash argued. She was getting angry again, and the angrier she got, the hotter she felt. The skin around her bruised arm had started to itch. We don't even know who you are. It's just a coincidence. Coincidence? The Shido roared. Was it coincidence that you showed up just in time to drive my living planet into a frenzy? Was it coincidence that you exposed Evazant just as he completed his resurrection serum? God damn it. And was it coincidence that your very next stop was Gobindi, only 3 weeks after my virus experiments had begun? Tash opened her mouth to speak, then shut it. Who was this guy? Dr. Kavafi spoke up and addressed the Shido. Whoever you are playing with forces beyond your control. The virus inside this ziggurat was not meant to be disturbed. If it spreads, it could create a plague of galactic proportions. The Shido yawned. Actually, Dr. Kavafi, the virus you are so worried about was quite limited when I found it. He said through the comm unit. Oh, it was deadly enough. It took over its hosts at an alarming rate, but it wasn't very contagious. You cannot catch it by breathing the same air someone infected has breathed. It cannot live very long outside a hot environment. It dies quickly unless it finds a host. The Shido shrugged. I've done some tinkering with the virus's structure. My new version is far more effective because it can travel through the air. At least, I think it can. We are going to test it now. In his observation booth, the Shido pulled a switch. Several vents in the walls and ceilings opened up, and Tash heard the whir of fans blowing air into the hot chamber. The Shido spoke again. You have already seen the results of the virus. It doesn't kill its hosts. It invades the body of the victim and wraps it in a cocoon of slime, then continues to feed off it. I'm not sure how long the victims live. Tash shook her head. She could not believe how evil this being was. The people who disappeared, the people who've been arrested, you've been testing the virus on them. How could you? The Shido laughed. I'm going to do far worse than that. Once I'm sure the virus can infect people through the air, I'm going to test it on a much larger scale. He opened his arms wide. I have turned this entire ziggurat into one enormous air vent, with the infirmary as the cover. Once the infirmary is gone, I plan to blow billions upon billions of virus particles over the city of Madala. You can't! Kavafi yelled. Why else do you think I have arranged to trap these people on the planet for so long? There are so many different species here. It is the perfect test to see which species are affected by the virus and which are not. The Shido paused. And that is the truly terrifying thing about a virus, don't you think? He said, you cannot see it, you cannot smell it, you cannot taste it, but it is there. It is there, in the room, with you, right now. Tash and Kavafi looked around. The room looked no different than it had a moment before, but they knew it was different. It had been filled with a deadly plague. Actually, you should be honored, Dr. Kavafi.
the Shido said. "I've been saving you for this particular phase of my tests. And the Aranda girl, well, she's been doomed since the moment she arrived on Gobindi." The Shido examined some instruments in the control booth. "Excellent. It appears my virus dispersal unit is functioning according to plan. If you two will excuse me, I have to make plans to infect a city." He closed his eyes and his skin began to wrinkle and bubble. The next instant, the Shido had been replaced by the perfect image of Dr. Kavafi. The false doctor reached for a lever. "You will have to pardon the blast shield I'm about to close. I can't let any of the virus escape just yet, can I?" The blast shield slammed shut across the transparent steel door viewport, and the Shido was gone. Fuck! Okay, so, sorry to read so much, but I was on a roll, I was having fun.
It was all important, and it was all very entertaining, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Tash, there's still more of this chapter, by the way. I read like 7 pages, and there's still more of the chapter.
There's a lot, there's still a lot more here.
That's very, listen, it is what it is. Okay, so Tash puts on her electroscope that she still is hanging on to, and she can see the virus now. And it's not, there's little pockets of air where the virus hasn't reached yet. And she sees that the virus is not infiltrating her skin, so it's not infecting her. What's going on there? And Kavafi seems very surprised by this. He's like, what makes you immune? The real Kavafi, of course. We're not talking about the false Kavafi, as he was.
Right.
The false doctor.
The false doctor. I love that. Tash decides to run through the virus, the air for the virus, and look for an exit. Kavafi stays behind in a small pocket of uninfected air. And as she's crawling around looking for an exit, she finds Hool locked up. She can see him locked up, and he's constantly changing shape to fight off the possibility of infection. So the infection can't get going because he's like, I'm a Wookiee now, and I'm a little rat boy now, whatever, all that stuff. And
I'm a slimy eel. I'm a snaky snake.
Yes, a snaky snake. And the false Kavafi...
favorite Star Wars creature.
Yes, the false Kavafi comes up behind her and marvels. Once again, he's there again. And he marvels at Hool's ingenious solution. But when Tash starts to brag that she seems to be immune to his virus as well, he points out that the reason she's not getting infected now is because she's already been infected since the day she arrived. He injected her himself. Oh, no. Oh. And that growth on her arm, how big is that now? The size of her hand, that's how big.
Alright, and this virus is beginning to take over her body, and one of these blobs comes out of her shoulder, and it's just sitting there on her shoulder. It came out of her skin. It's gross. It's disgusting. It's vile. And Uncle Hool, he starts pounding on the plexiform chamber, and he points to a control panel on the wall. Tash, she goes for it, but the blob shoots out a pair of tendrils and they wrap around her legs. She fights it. She fights it with anger. She fights it with a burning desire for revenge. And eventually, it brings her to her knees. She is losing. But then she remembers what Dr. Kavafi said about emotions and how they can cause changes in your body. And then she remembered what Wedge said about the Jedi. The Jedi don't know revenge. They only fight for... They think only for what they fight for. So Tash, she gets up and she forgets about the virus. She forgets about the Empire and she forgets about revenge. Instead, she thinks about Uncle Hool, DV, and of course, Zack. And miraculously, the virus loses its hold of her and it begins to fall off. She reaches the control panel and she frees Uncle Hool. Uncle Hool runs to her, and for the first time ever, she sees Uncle Hool smile. And she confesses that she thought he was working with the Empire and he was behind this whole thing. And he says, no, that evil Shido is to blame. He was waiting for us. He fooled us all. And Tash wonders, now that this thing fell off of her, if she's cured. He doesn't know, but he wonders if she wonders if the real Dr. Kavafi would know. And Hool's all like, Dr. Kavafi is here? And she's like, yeah, he is, and we should probably go save him. So, Uncle Hool, at first, he transforms into a Wookiee, and he destroys the mechanism that the evil imposter Kavafi was going to use to spread the virus worldwide. He gets rid of that. Then they save the real Dr. Kavafi, and then they find a door, and they open it, and it leads outside, and Zach, DV, Wedge, and the Bothan are on the other side. There is no cliffhanger this chapter.
So...
a happy ending.
Yep.
Moving on. So here we are at the end of the book. Zach wants an explanation, but Hool says it can wait, and he transforms into a mammoth frog, and everybody climbs on his back to safety. And he's like, we still need to cure Tash, and apparently DV and Zach, they read a message on one of the doors or some bullshit. Whatever. And Hool transforms into a flying creature called a Rawk, Rawwk, and flies all the way up the ziggurat back to the shroud and returns with the ship. And when everybody arrives back at the infirmary, where they head to the infirmary, the Empire has deserted the place because everybody thought that the plague would be infecting the planet by now. And Kavafi is tasked with whipping up the antidote for Tash. And we've got, really 2 pages here, and I'm going to read these less dramatically this time. But here we go. An hour later, Tash lay in her bed, unconscious. Zach wiped perspiration from her forehead with a cloth. Are you sure she's all right? He asked. Dr. Kavafi nodded. She is sweating out the last of the virus. This antidote is strong. It should return the victims to their normal state. Wedge was anxious. We shouldn't stay long. Eventually, the Empire will send someone down to check on the progress of the virus. We'll leave shortly, Hool replied, but we may have an Imperial blockade to deal with. Wedge grinned. I can help. I have some experience running blockades. The pilot looked down at Tash. So these ziggurats that we thought were buildings were actually just giant containers for viruses? It's a good thing the Gobindi were smart enough to leave the antidotes carved out on the outside. Tash stirred. Then, with a gasp, she opened her eyes and saw 6 concerned faces staring down at her. Is it gone? She asked. It seems to be, Dr. Kavafi said. How do you feel? Tash took a deep breath. She shuddered, remembering the feeling of the virus crawling over her. I need a vacation. Everyone chuckled. Everyone chuckled. Except for Hool, whose face was set in deep contemplation. Master Hool, is something bothering you? DV inquired. Hool nodded. Indeed. I was just thinking. The Gobindi civilization vanished. If they could contain this virus, terrible as it is, imagine the power of the virus that eventually destroyed them. DV's circuits shivered at the thought. Let's just hope, wherever it is, it remains hidden forever. And that's the end of the chapter 19, and then there's a very short epilogue, so I didn't bother summarizing it because it's literally a paragraph, or 2 paragraphs. Several days later, and 10,000 light years away, on a shuttle rocketing towards his own secret citadel, the evil Shidow scowled. His plan had failed. Hool had discovered a cure, making his virus useless. He would just have to start again with a new organism. The Shidow put his hand on a small vial that was tightly sealed to prevent the escape of its deadly electroscopic contents. So that's a hint at the next book, I guess. So, this book, the ending here, I think before we get into our final thoughts, I wanted to talk. We thought, the big mystery here is going to be who is the scientist, and now we know he's a Shidow.
Just like Uncle Hool.
Yes. So we know that. I think that's actually... So, to me, whatever. We'll figure out more about him. It seems like he's not going to be the big mysterious character the whole time, but I think the more interesting question is who is Force Flow?
Yes.
Yep.
So, because that's
it seemed like even the evil Shido knew something that like Force Flow had said.
So could they be
earlier in the book?
Do you think they're one and the same?
They could be the same.
Oh.
And just to shake things up.
I mean, this guy is evil.
Right. So he could be much like, his boss, Sheev, kind of playing both sides of the field. Making sure the outcome calculated.
There's
and
very
what he wants it to
very
be.
good people on both sides.
Yep.
Sorry.
I really want Force Flow to be... I want Force Flow to be Obi-Wan, and I want Obi-Wan to just be spending his time...
He's like getting up on it.
Obi-Wan is a good Force Ghost at this point, though.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But he could still be like Ghost in a computer.
He could be a Ghost Rider. You guys watch Ghost Rider?
Yes.
That show.
For sure.
You have not seen... I'm an old person.
The Johnny Depp movie?
No.
Isn't that the one?
No, that's Ewan McGregor and Pierce Brosnan. And you're thinking of The Ninth Gate is the Johnny Depp movie. Anyway, that's the Ghost movie that he made. Anyway, those are both Roman Polanski movies.
Or are you thinking of Transcendence, where he becomes the internet?
I think that's the one I'm thinking.
Okay, not Yes, that is what... I'm sorry. Ghost in my mind. Okay.
Patrick Swayze Ghost, right?
Ghosts are in your mind.
Ghost Rider was a PBS TV show that was about a ghost who could only communicate through writing. So that included like refrigerator magnet letters, notebook letters, and all that kind of stuff. And like these kids that lived in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, would solve like these supernatural mysteries with the help of Ghost Rider, and it's eventually, I believe, revealed that he might have been like the ghost of like a runaway slave or something like that. Anyway, that show fucking rules. Like
sounds really
one of the coolest kids shows ever. Guess who plays Jamal, the main character? Guess who plays his dad? I'm not joking. Samuel L. Jackson.
Damn!
This show rules. It was great. I think all the episodes are on YouTube. Very delightful show. Ghost Rider. Yeah. Check it out. What are we talking about? Planet Plague?
Force Flow. Who is Force Flow?
Force Flow is Ghost Rider, is what I'm saying. He's a runaway slave.
There we go.
From the antebellum South.
Final thoughts. Mel, do you want to go first?
That's good.
Sure. Yeah, I don't really know how to say this, but this book was okay. It's fine. That's about all I have to say. But no, I enjoyed it, I guess. This is weird because probably like the last book that I actually read and finished was also for this podcast. So it's not like I have a lot of other books to compare it to or really know what I'm talking about.
Now you're making yourself sound like you don't read it all. But
I don't.
That's not true. You start a lot of books.
I do. I start a very good amount of books, whether or not they get finished.
Okay. Well, yeah.
That's another story.
You were reading Jane Eyre on our trip.
Yeah,
a month ago.
I'm still working on that probably for the next couple months. Because I read this book instead.
But you're pretty far. But
I'll tell you this. I like the characters in this book. I think Tash is cool. We didn't get a whole lot of Zach, but he's a prime guy.
It seems to be they're switching back and forth between the characters.
Yeah, so. I think DV is interesting as a protocol droid, or not protocol droid, that
research
is kind
droid.
of like forced to take care of these kids. And of course Hool, the man of mystery. Mm-hmm. So there's good things there. It was very good in its description of like the planet, and it had very unique things to it, which they all should, and yeah.
Okay, well then what's your midichlorian scale?
It's out of 10,
yeah.
And then there's Ken Steve's. I would give it a 5.5.
Okay, alright.
Yeah.
Alright.
Hey, well...
Oh,
whichever. Ahead. I don't care. Who goes
you go
first?
Ahead. You start
okay,
it.
Listen, I don't totally disagree with your more tepid reaction. Of the 3 Galaxy of Fear books, I think this is my least favorite that we've read so far. I don't I don't think it's bad at all. I like these characters enough, and I'm invested in the mysteries. I am invested in who Force Flow is, and even to find out more about this mysterious Shido, who is the scientist. We know his race at least now. I just thought this story was a little half baked. It felt kind of short. I wish that Wedge had been a little better integrated, because like Wedge, while he's not a significant character really in the movies, like at this time in the expanded universe, he's the star of the show, man. Like Rogue Squadron comics are in full force. You got the X-Wing books starting up right around this time. Michael A. Stackpole, those books are, they're killer. They're all killer. We should have done a podcast about that series. But anyway, so I wish he was in it a little more, but I enjoyed his presence. I think John Whitman's a pretty solid writer for this realm. I think he's. You mentioned that this is the closest things have come to Jude. I like those books a lot more, but that's partially just because I just find the character dynamics more interesting. We'll see how this develops over the course of the next year or so as we occasionally revisit the series. But
right,
because we only got one more book in this run. But I don't know. I'm going to go 6.5 out of 10 midichlorians, and we'll flavor it with we'll just flavor it with Wedge. Let's go basic here.
There we go. That's good choice. All right. My biggest gripe with this book, again, it's my least favorite that we've read of the three, and I think it's because this book is not spooky enough. That was a problem with the first book too. It wasn't spooky enough.
I can't even let this be a problem at this point. It's clearly like it was just a marketing hook for the series. Sometimes it's going to be spooky, sometimes it's not going to be spooky.
Yeah,
right. It is a little like forced. Like, we got to make this seem weirder than it actually is.
And we don't need every chapter to end a cliffhanger. But yeah, that's my biggest gripe. This book wasn't spooky at all. So I'm going to go right in between you guys. I'm going to give it a 6. And I'm going to flavor it a rock. A rock? And this is a bird that still exists in the canon. And,
really? Wow.
They are native.
A mammavian.
Apparently, and they were native to Bespin. They lived in the gaseous planet's atmosphere. So, yep. Rock. I rock and roll.
The Rock and Roll of Fame
all day long.
The Rock and Roll of Fame nominations came out. I don't feel like talking about it. It's fine.
Terrible as usual.
They're okay. There's some good ones in there, but it is what it is. Anyway.
Well,
next week.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yes.
We hadn't even thanked you yet for being on the show.
We were getting there, but thank you, Mel. You're always a great time. You throw some chaos into the show, which is appreciated because the show can get very stale.
It can. It very stale.
I have. There's no end to the chaos of my life. So.
Hey, we're all muddling through, Mel. It's
all
fine.
getting through it.
It's all fine.
Doing our best.
So anyway, next week we're gonna have another guest. At least we hope. We'll see how the scheduling works.
The schedule might not work out.
But we're going to have another guest. Actually pretty excited about this one for the Nightmare Machine, Book 4 of Galaxy of Fear. That'll wrap up our October thing, and then we're back to Jude finally. Maybe we'll...
Jedi Quest.
So if you guys have been listening to the first 10 minutes of these episodes and been like, I just want Jude back, she's coming. So...
Yep.
Anyway, so next week though, Nightmare Machine.
We're going to Hologram Fun World, people.
Ooh.
Pack your bags.
We're going to Hologram Fun World, and you know what? I'm gonna try to put him on blast. Say people are expecting him. With Sam McCauley will be our guest. He was a guest of ours on the episode 1 extravaganza. If he doesn't show up, hey, don't blame him. We all work for a living. We need something. But. He has the book. He's in possession of the book right now, and he should be.
Oh, good.
You should be reading it if you're not working, Sam. So anyway, I'm threatening you,
Sam, if you're listening.
All right. Well, until the books are due back,
the library is closed. Padawan Library is hosted and produced by Tim May and Levi Peretic. It is edited by Tim May. Our theme song is by the Astral Project. Our artwork is by Freddie Funbuns. Padawan Library is copyright 2019 by Tim May and Levi Peretic. All rights reserved.